this is basically like an update of the project that's been going over the last 3 months. It's about scoping a lived experience peer workforce association. And so basically there's basically going to be, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Walsh from the Mental Health Commission first, and then I'm going to do some reflections from the project that's occurred so far. And I would really warmly welcome people who are on the reference group if you'd like to jump in, or anyone else jump in. We will also obviously try and allow for Q&A for people that have questions. So okay. Really having a lot of fun with technology today, not. I just wanted to take a moment to pause and to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on. Where I am is I'm on Whadjuk Noongar Butcher in the beautiful city of Perth, and I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and extend respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across this vast state and this vast country, so wherever you're tuning in from. I'd also like to just take a moment to recognise the lived experience voice. You know, the importance of the lived and living experience voice of consumers and family members and significant others, and the importance of the lived experience voice to inform everything that we do. And I really want to thank those that have come before us, those who are here even, and those people who spoke even though their voice shook and they shared their personal stories to create personal change. So I don't want to take up any more bandwidth. I'd like to actually hand over straight to Sarah Walsh at the Mental Health Commission. And so, Sarah, you're really going to give us a bit of an update about the bigger picture of the lived experience peer workforce. So, as I say, you've got quite a few slides to go through, and then we'll have Q&A after that.
Sure, thanks, Pip.
And so you just tell me, and I'll hit the slide. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to skip.
Okay?
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just say skip, and then you can go to the next one.
You can enjoy watching me fiddle-faddle with the tech.
Great. I'll just do a little introduction. So, hi everyone, I'm Sarah Walsh from the Mental Health Commission. I'm leading the stakeholder engagement team at the Mental Health Commission at the moment, and also working on a lot of the initiatives within the peer space. I've got with me my colleague Louise Howe, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, who's also managing this project on the side with me for this development of the peer space, which is very, very exciting. So I might get you to skip through that one. Thanks, Pip.
Of course.
Yes, so just a little bit of an overview of what I'll cover today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the lived experience peer workforces, and I plural the S on the end there. The WA Mental Health Commission's lived experience strategy, our lived experience workforces development, particularly within the HSP space at this time, and also our lived experience peer workforce framework. And then we'll have a bit of time at the end for some next steps and questions. Next one, thanks, Pip. You can skip the purple one too, thank you. So this is a little bit of a definition of what we're talking about when we talk about lived experience peer workforces. And I know we're kind of preaching to the choir here. You guys know what we're talking about, but this is just something that I wanted to show you all anyway. It's kind of the wording that we're using for across the sector. So a lived experience peer worker is an individual who has had a personal life-changing experience of mental health, alcohol and other drug challenges, and or suicidal thoughts or feelings, or a family member or significant other who has or is caring about someone with these experiences, or who has been bereaved by suicide. So individuals in a designated lived experience roles are required to use their lived experience expertise, which is drawn from their experience, plus training and development in the peer work and understanding of the broader social and civil rights movements. The lived experience expertise is the primary lens through which the person will approach their role. So I guess the main take of this one is that we're not talking about having just a lived experience isn't what these roles are about. We're talking about everything else that goes around that. So it's really having the training and the development behind that to be able to support you in your roles. Let's skip that one. Thanks, Pip.
Oopsie, sorry. I thought I had just enough time to quickly have a look at the messages. Sorry.
I know we've got a few to go through, so I'm going through a bit quick, but please do yell out if you've got any questions, everyone. Otherwise, we can ask some questions at the end as well. So I emphasised before that we're looking at the lived experience peer workforces, and the reason we have the S on the end there is that we acknowledge that there is more than just the one peer workforce. So we've got the consumer lived experience peer workforce, and this is more in particular with the work that we're doing in WA here. We've focused on these three pillars. So the Aboriginal lived experience peer workforce and also the family significant other peer workforce. Another step back is the term family significant other. When we're relating to that workforce in WA, we've got, or the Mental Health Commission itself has got the remit of both mental health and alcohol and other drugs. And this was a term that was seen as preferred as opposed to family carer, which has been used in the past in the mental health space. So we're talking about these workforces. As I said, we've got the three pillars up the top there, but we also have a whole lot of specialisation. So this can be changed from, whether they're derived from shared lived experiences across but not limited to identification, background, population, settings, location, etc. And an example would be that you might have somebody who is has an experience working in an ED, as a busy emergency department in the metro area. You may not want to have that person employed in a rural setting, for instance. It's a kind of a different role. So there are different specialisations that are needed across the peer workforce positions. Next slide, thanks, Pip. So with the peer workforce, and I know that I kind of highlighted then a little bit more about the positions within a peer support worker, but we're talking about growing the lived experience peer workforce across the sector. So we're talking about positions from within government writing policy. We're talking about research positions, consumer consultant positions. We are also talking about those on the ground peer support workers as well, but there's a variety of other roles that we're really trying to get across there, that lived experience roles, it's important to have them in every sort of aspect of an organisation, not just on that ground level. Next slide, thanks, Pip. So the Mental Health Commission has put together a bit of a strategy for working with our peer workforce, and we haven't just pulled that out of anywhere. We've kind of gone from guidance from things that happen from a global scale, national, from a state level, and also from within what's happened within our project at the moment, so within our steering committee. So things like the National Lived Experience Peer Workforces Development Guidelines, the Productivity Commission into Mental Health. We've got our state priorities document, documents such as our Infant, Child and Adolescent Task Force report. All of those pieces are talking about the need for peer workers, and they all have individual little bits that kind of add to that we've taken off to help develop our strategy. So things like talking about organisational readiness, the importance of peer supervision, etc. Next slide, thanks, Pip. So this, and I know you won't be able to read this clearly, but we can share this page separately if you like as well. This just gives a bit of an overview of the strategy. So you'll see the top level there is the current items, and that includes things like we offer at the moment, the Mental Health Commission supports 20 scholarships per year for our Peer Cert 4 course. Whereas in the orange section in the middle, we're talking about increased peer scholarships. So this year we were able to offer over 50 scholarships. Additional scholarships, I should say, to the 20. We're also doing some things like our lived experience, our peer skill set course, which is kind of, it's 3 or 4 modules of our Peer Cert 4 course that can be offered to students who potentially aren't ready to take on a Cert 4 course. They might want to have a bit of a taster to see if they're interested in that in the field, or it might be somebody who's already undertaken their mental health Cert 4 and they want to get into peer work as well. So there's a few different ways there for people to get into it. Some of the other things that are involved in there as well is the scoping of a peer association, which is this work that Pip's been undertaking for us. Whereas in the yellow section down the bottom, the long term, we've got the establishment of a peer association. So we're really trying to set up the foundations for this workforce. So it's not just putting positions on the ground. We're talking about these pieces that go around it to really make sure that it thrives along the way. There's some additional pieces in there, like some mapping work. There's some additional skill set courses. You'll see all of the yellow pieces there that are highlighted in the middle row. They're all to do with our peer worker framework, which I will talk about the framework shortly as well. but we're looking at a framework. We've got a few supporting resources to go with that as well. I can see a comment there from Carly saying you're currently doing the course. That's great, Carly. Yeah, so there's lots of little pieces there that are kind of all come together that we've pulled from, I guess, all of the feedback that we've got from people. Another one is the peer supervision course. So whilst everyone's saying that it's important to have peer supervisors, we want to make sure that we've got a number of them out there. If we're going to increase these positions, we want to make sure that there's actual supervisors out there so that we can not only tell organisations they should have external supervision offered to their staff, but give them some indication of where they can find those supervisors as well. So there's a pilot program running at the moment, and we'll be working further with Commonwealth to enhance that as well. Next slide, thanks, Pim.
So I hope you don't mind. I just sort of made that, I just went through, you don't necessarily have to go through these, but I was just trying to make them a bit bigger so people could see. That was all.
Yeah, sure. No, this is really great because it may not be that I talk too much about them today, but you guys can then read them better. You can actually see these pieces. So some of the things you can see the midterm there, we've got the regional peer scholarships, so we're increasing those. There's also some training happening in the mental health professional online development platform as well. We've got our framework, as I spoke about, and now some of the supporting resources for that is an Aboriginal peer workforce guide and also a peer worker handbook. Long term, yes, we do. In the midterm, we do have some peer scholarships that we're looking to increase, but we're really trying to work with the regions on a long-term basis too and see how we can get those embedded as traineeships, perhaps. Next slide, thanks, Pip. So supporting specialist workforce. So we have, yes, the courses, we've got a few different AOD foundational skill set courses as well, our organisational readiness training. So we're doing some work in current with some of the HSPs, but there will be some things that happen sort of further as well. Initially, the majority of the funding that we've got to support this work in the first instance has come from our infant, child and adolescent task force. So a lot of the work that we're doing is surrounding those HSPs and the outcomes of that project. But what we see it is as a really great way to set these foundations for us to then extend across the sector. So whilst there may not be any set positions or things that we're putting out into the NGOs, we definitely want to work with our NGO partners to you know, provide them any guidance and support that we can for the work that we're doing. Yeah, next slide, thanks, Pip. This has just got, yeah, a few more items there. So we've got our Here For You support line. We've got our parent and family support group. So that's something that's in our, the facilitated family support group is in our long term. That's something that we need to apply for funding for, but it's a gap that we've definitely seen as something that could be worth us going down that avenue. Thanks, Beth. Sorry, guys, I haven't really read these breakdowns, so just bear with me a moment. So, yeah, the accredited peer supervision course. So whilst we have this peer pilot program that I spoke about before, we're really wanting to, in the long term, we want to end up with an accredited course. So we want something that people can feel reassured that if they're going to a peer supervisor, an external supervisor, that they know that they're going to somebody who has the same moral groundings and, you know, and work behind them to support the workforce. Our online WA Peer Hub is another key piece. So that's where we're developing that at the moment. And that's going to house our peer work framework and also our supporting resources. We see it's going to be a place where we don't want to duplicate what's already out there. So we want to make sure that the sector is connected. So say there's a support group that's run with another organisation, we want to make sure that we link them in with that. But it's really an electronic, you know, a platform, I guess, for people to be able to get all of the information that we've gathered in the one spot. Thanks, Pip. And the last one is the mapping piece. So there is a little bit of work happening in the pipeline, but it is more of a longer term type thing that we're looking at. So we're working with our governance team at the moment on that one. Thanks, Pip. So next one, thanks. Yep. So we know that there's some benefits to peer work and there's also implementation risks. But what the literature, I guess, and the work that we've done so far has really told us is that organisational readiness is a key to really make sure that we, A, highlight the benefits, but B, also mitigate any of those risks that are associated with establishing a new workforce. You know, we don't want a workforce that's just thrown out there and set up and then there's nothing around it to support it and it fails. We want to make sure there's that, you know, the organisational commitment around it, the culture shift, and there's strategies within each organisation to support that. And that's what we see is going to be really successful for embedding the lived experience peer workforces. Thanks, Pip. Now this one, you can click all of these, Pip, thanks, and just get the 2 purple ones on the side there. That's great, thank you. So this just breaks down a little bit to some of the initiatives that we're working on at the moment. And as I mentioned earlier, the funding that we have got is linked to our infant, child, adolescent task force. So there are a few pieces in here that aren't so much within the community, but we feel that they're a really good foundational piece for the work that's happening. So we have 13 peer coordinators coming on from January next year within the health service providers. So that's 7 across the regions and the rest within the metro area. And then we're also applying for funding for additional peer workers from July next year as well. The intention is that we want to work with these coordinators to really make sure the organisations are set up before we go and increase the peer workforce down the track. So to support this, we've got some commitment from the HSPs to embed the lived experience peer workforce. We've managed to secure executive sponsors from each of the health service providers, and we've been running some peer positives training with them. And that's been really beneficial, I think, so far. It's been, you know, proving a great way for us to link in with them and kind of challenge any barriers and things as they come across. In the organisational development space, we've got a peer implementation team. That'll be a 3-year team that will help to implement all of these pieces. So not only will we work closely with the executive champions, but also with those peer coordinators, you know, across all of these pieces as well. We've got our lived experience peer framework and our organisational toolkit as one of the supporting resources. And we've also implemented some bi-monthly meetings as well. From a professional development side, and Pip, I'm not sure if you've got a little thing on the screen there, we can't quite see.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So we've got our, no, still there. There we go, that's better, thanks. So we've got our peer Cert 4 training places. As I mentioned, we've got some increased places there and a variety across not just the peer Cert 4, but also the skill set course. We've got our peer supervision training that we're running the pilot of and the peer association. And then we're also going to be developing a group reflective practice session, and that will be for our coordinators when they're brought on board as well. Thanks, Pip. Next slide. And next one again. Thank you. So onto our peer worker framework. So the framework's for lived experience, the peer workforce, it's for the emerging workforce, the funding bodies, organisations and the service users. We see it as something that's going to provide strategic direction across the WA context. And we say that because there's a lot of work that's happening across Australia, but we really want to make sure that the work we're doing is focused in WA. You're right. We also want to reinforce the guiding principles for embedding the experience peer workforce. We want to define the culture shift that's needed for transformation and provide recommendations for action. Thanks, Pip. So this next slide gives you a little bit of a breakdown of what you kind of can expect to see in the framework. So we're looking at the contemporary workforces. We're talking about the qualities in the peer workforce. We do touch a little bit on the different breakdowns. So where we've got consumers, family, significant other, Aboriginal peer work, and some of the other specialties as well. But we do recognise that there's further work that's needed in that area. So hence our supporting resources, we're developing a peer worker handbook, which is really going to show that diversity within the peer workforce. We're also going to develop one of the supporting resources is the organisational readiness toolkit and an Aboriginal peer worker handbook as well. Next slide, thanks, Pip. So the framework itself is currently with our Minister for Mental Health for approval, which is very, very exciting. So we're waiting for that to come through. And this is just our initial piece. So as I said, we've got our supporting resources that will then be developed, and we're hoping to have them released towards the end of the year. And they're together are going to kind of really form that you know, a real practical tool, I guess, for organisations and for people who are who are in the peer workforce as well, to kind of get a better idea of where they stand. You know, it'll have some sort of guidelines in there on peer supervision so that organisations know that, okay, so we're supposed to offer peer supervision. There's some out there at the moment that don't really understand that. So we're really hoping that will be a useful tool for everybody. Organisational readiness in partners with the Mental Health Commission's implementation team is also underway. So as I mentioned before, we're doing that with our HSPs and starting to, really get that out there so that, as I said, we've got to start at that level because of these positions we're putting on, but we are looking to see that it's something that we could expand across the sector as well. That's pretty much all from me. I know that I've gone through that pretty quick, but I was really hoping to allow enough time at the end here for anybody to ask any questions.
So I was going to throw that open and either through the chat or would people like to ask a question? And that's okay if you don't.
I don't know. Oh, sorry, Carly, I bet you to the post. I don't know if I want to ask a question, but I just want to say great work, because that is very comprehensive, and you can see, like, being one that's been a part of some of the consultations, so I can really see those voices coming out in what you've developed, and the focus, you said it a few times, Sarah, about the peer supervision and organisational readiness, and I think that they're two integral keys to making sure that the sector is ready, because because peer supervision is very different to the normal line supervision. And I myself have had to seek mine elsewhere, separate to work that I do. So I'm really grateful that that's in there. So thank you. Good work.
Thanks, Trish, and thank you to yourself and to everybody here who's been part of this piece of the work, but also more widely in the rest of the work that we've been doing, because we wouldn't be able to gather, we wouldn't be able to put anything forward without the input that you guys have put together. So thank you.
And so Carly, you were next, I think, and then we'll come to Aoife. Is that right?
And you can come to me, Louise.
Oh, so sorry, Louise.
That's all right. I'm sorry, I forgot I interrupted Carly. Sorry.
You go for it, Louise. I'll wait.
Oh, thank you. I just a couple of comments rather than questions. Was some of this work is nationally leading work as well, even though other states are doing their pieces in the peer work. Some of the work we're doing will lead some of, we might kick off some national initiatives, especially including like peer workforce mapping and the benchmarking. And also there is a lot going on in the peer space here. And the reason for some of that is because sometimes at the Commission, we get opportunities for funding that we're not expecting. And we get asked to, have you got anything we can fund? Or, sometimes these things happen unexpectedly. So while there's a lot happening, and it may look like, it may seem a bit ad hoc or slightly uncoordinated, or maybe you've seen a gap where we might need something, some of this work has been planned, and some of it we've been really fortunate to be on the other end of funding, and we've quickly been able to put some strategies out and have them approved. So that's been a great thing, and we're really appreciative of that, because as all of us know, I'm sure this has been a really long time coming, and that's why we could get some initiatives out quite quickly, because we've been preparing for this work. When I say we, the peer workforce has been preparing for this work for a really long time. So I just wanted to make those comments. So Carly.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to the engagement team, but also the stakeholders that were involved in the working group. I'm so pleased that all those consumer and carer leaders have come together to be part of this. I'm also really excited that there's going to be an accredited peer supervision qualification in the future. I suppose the only thing that I'm curious about from an organisational readiness perspective is that I understand the focus being on HSPs at the moment, and I'm just wondering, will the organisational readiness toolkit maybe be updated to sort of provide more of a community non-government context? Because I think some of the service models are different. Like, for example, a lot of the work in the NGOs might be outreach, and I'm just thinking, is that something that could possibly be included at a later stage?
Absolutely, Carly. And I actually think that the organisational toolkit itself, it's across both things. So the foundational pieces, so talking about that peer workers need to have external supervision, or that there needs to be that space allowed for that. Being able to be a little bit more flexible in the way that we work with our, employment of staff. So rather than look, it's a full-time position and that's it, let's talk about the options of job sharing, or let's talk about some different opportunities that are out there. So there's a lot of the pieces there that I think will transition quite, readily for either whether it's NGO space or HSP space. There may be some things that we put in there, like some draft JDFs, so there's some job description type things, which, they may be slightly different across, whether it's private, public, or, NGO land. But I think that the crux of it, will be very much significantly across both areas.
That's exciting. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Louise, did you want to say anything before I pass to Aoife?
Oh, only that things like, and again, as Sarah said, we're preaching to the converted. Everyone needs clear job descriptions, professional development and career pathways. So that goes across all of the sectors. And in fact, I suggest across all jobs, not just the peer workforce, but let's just spell it out for people anyway.
Thank you. Aoife, over to you.
Thank you. Awesome work, guys. I'm really fortunate and feel blessed that I'm coming over to the Mental Health Commission very soon, and to be involved in the peer workforce, hopefully moving forward, would be fantastic. Which leads me to ask as well, and I guess I kind of do know the answer that this is all in the making, but I have a background in health promotion, and I'm obviously hoping to sort of like gain my skills that I lost during my lived experience and work into the prevention areas. Are you guys looking at lived experience in the health promotion and prevention areas as well?
Look, ideally, we want to promote lived experience positions across everywhere, and it's something that at the moment we don't do very well. We don't practice what we preach in that regards. We've got a few lived experience positions here. We are getting more designated positions, but it is something that we've definitely got the support higher up, and so we are definitely looking to expand that across the Mental Health Commission.
Excellent. And then secondary, with relation to I guess all of the qualifications that are going to be coming out and that also are still being offered now also, do you have to have one in order to do the other? So let's say the peer support supervisor training was offered, would you have to have that certificate for in the mental health or peer support in order to be eligible to apply for something else like that? Is it going on a tiered kind of a situation, or how would that be working?
Look, at this stage, we're only just running it as a pilot program. So we're working with Comwa to run that peer cert for the supervision course. And it was something that we asked them to develop something for starters, then run it as a pilot, and then we can assess it to see what we need to do from there. So it could very well come out of it that, you know what, people who do this course do need to undertake the peer cert 4 course, but at this stage it's just a pilot, so I can't really give you a definite answer on that one.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, excellent. Sure. Thank you so much. Looking forward to meeting you all and working with you soon though. Cool.
Great, thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Louise?
No, probably not. Actually, I hadn't thought of that question, Aoife. It is an interesting one because I myself would like to do the peer supervision course, but I don't have the cert 4, so but I'm experienced in the peer work. And
that's right. And the reason again I think I am asking is that throughout my career, like I've got a couple of degrees, and I've got a cert 4 in community services and leadership management, and at this stage in my life I'm like, oh, I'd love to do all that, but I can't be bothered studying anymore. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's also that knowing, knowing as well what is going to be recognised as prior learning.
So Aoife, I know Tracy Hennessy's listening. So Tracy, I hope you're taking notes because I think these are really important, nuanced training questions. I actually wanted to just speak. Oh, so sorry, Tracy. I just wanted to just 1 second, if you don't mind indulging me. That first question around health promotion, I actually come from the health world. And so this has been a really interesting project for me as a lived experience consultant. And I would absolutely love to see cancer peers, stroke peers, all the peers, we desperately need them. But anyway, Tracy, I think you were going to answer my questions. I do apologise.
No, I was just going to say there's always, like, if you've studied units before, obviously, and it has to be the same code for a unit, but you can get
I
a credit if
know.
that's been done. But the skill set is probably something that's more appropriate for yourself and for others that just want to sort of have that gap, the filling in stuff of the peer specific. And that's where the skill set comes in really handy.
Thanks, Tracy. I might just leave that there. And I know that Mark and Jess have asked a question. What I might do, if it's okay, because I'm just conscious that some people need to leave at 5.
Absolutely.
I'll take those 2 questions, and then I'll do the bit that I was going to do about this project, just so that I can get through hopefully most of that before 5. So Mark, over to you.
You hear me?
Only just.
I've just been listening, and I'm just actually really impressed with, I guess, the momentum that's been building. And I've been in my peer work role now for 3.5 years. And recently, I've just noticed there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and it's great to know that the Mental Health Commission is following up with a lot of this stuff. I'm excited about the possibilities about the future in terms of like the framework that it's going to set us up to. And I guess when you're going through the slides there, but just the actual structural support, so not actually rushing into it that much, but just sort of like carefully trying to make sure that there's safeties in there as well.
Yep.
There's not really much of a question. It's just basically saying.
More of a comment. We love a comment.
It's a comment, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, like, if that's okay, maybe I'll hold comments and pop those in the chat, because I think they're really important, and I really appreciate. I agree, the momentum's great. Jess, I think you had a question, and then I was going to take your question, and then I was going to move on to the presentation about this project.
It's just a quick one. Wow, I'm losing my voice. It's that time of the day. In regards to the Aboriginal lived experience workforce, there are obviously quite a significant pay difference currently in terms of your Aboriginal liaisons, similar type roles, and your peer workforce. Is that going to be challenged? Because I think that from what I'm seeing within WACS, it's quite hard to, we don't have the incentive to pull people into those roles from their existing ones, or even they're not touching them at the moment. So I'm curious, from a kind of structural level, will that be something that is challenged?
Sorry, Jess, can you just repeat the start of that?
It's about the differential between, peer work and, say, Aboriginal Health Liaison Officer work. Have I got that right, Jess?
Yeah, that's right. So right now there's quite a significant pay gap. And so trying to give enough incentive to put people in those Aboriginal peer roles, is that something that is being looked at?
Yeah, and look, like I'm not familiar with the Aboriginal liaison roles, what rate they're on or whatnot, compared to the like a lived experience peer support worker, or
it's about a 20 grand difference, just as a rough guideline.
Okay, so what we envisage is that the lived experience peer workforce is across all of those areas, so they should be the same. There shouldn't be a discrepancy across them. So we do understand that there is some, there's positions that are already out there, and that's going to be a challenge to change those. What we're working with at the moment is with the industrial relations people looking at establishing these positions. So within the health service providers we're starting with, but I think that will be a really good guide for the rest of the sector. And so we want to make sure that we really cover, we've got, there's the addition of what a peer worker brings to a position, but then from an Aboriginal perspective, there's also the cultural perspective as well that they bring to those positions as well. So we're trying to identify all of those pieces of work. And it is going to take some time, and we're only in the early stages of this, but we're sort of hoping that all of the work that we're doing to do these supporting resources, for instance, the organisational toolkit and also the Aboriginal Peer Worker Guide, will help us to put something forward and work further with IR to kind of make sure there's a little, less discrepancy between those then. I just note on the messages too, there was a comment about the Aboriginal Peer Worker Guide. So that's not developed yet. It's one of the supporting resources that will be developed as part of this work, but we see that it probably won't be ready until later in the year, so maybe even early next year. So we want to make sure that we're working with an Aboriginal organisation to help us develop that. So it's all of the consultation we've done to date, all of the information that we've got across the peer workforce, and then put into an Aboriginal context as well. We want to make sure we don't miss anything. There's a lot of, I guess, differences in the language. Even just the word peer isn't really recognised in a lot of the Aboriginal space. It might be mentor, or there's some other language that's used in that space too. So we want to make sure that we look at all of these pieces, and we want to be able to do it properly as well. So we feel that that's a piece that might take a little bit longer. So it's not accessible just yet. I think it was Mark, maybe.
Yeah, so it's Mark Winton from Wangening put that question forward. So presumably, hopefully, Wangening are on the radar for.
Yeah, and we've had initial conversations with Wangening about this. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for addressing that, Sarah.
No worries.
Brilliant. All right. Well, look, what I might do now is I might just have share the screen again, and I'll just have a little whiz through the slides that I put together, reflections from the project that I've had the opportunity to work on. And what could possibly go wrong? Nothing at all. The technology is going to be fantastic, isn't it? Yes. Oh, there we are. Not too bad. All right. So, just so this project, I think I mentioned at the very beginning, has been a 3-month project. So, just my background has been, I already mentioned, I've worked as a consumer advocate in health. And so it's been a wonderful opportunity. And I really think that I'm such a passionate person around the lived experience voice, and any project like this, it really does change you. And the conversations that I've had with people have really changed me. And it's been an absolutely thought-provoking project. And I'd like to echo Carly's thanks for the reference group members. I've got, Carly, I've got Trish Owen, I've got Vince Alessandra and Kathy Greenwood hiding there, all reference group members that gave up their time. But I know there's others of you that I had a chance to talk and meet, and all of you have really helped enlarge my understanding, and I think make me a better person. So obviously this little project, this 3 months project, it's like what we've been hearing already. It's that sense of you asked and we said. So what the Mental Health Commission have been working on is, there's been a lot of consultation work, and this is about trying to take the next step. So this very pragmatic project, it's about trying to do a piece of consultation, so rapid consultation, not co-design, and it's about creating a report which the Mental Health Commission can then use to do a business case to actually create a lived experience organisation. So, my first high level thing is there's been a lot of interest in the project, and I'm passionate about the work. And I just wanted to include this quote because it really spoke to me about what it is. This was a quote from somebody who put in an expression of interest to be part of the reference group. I personally started my recovery journey 6 years ago after many failed attempts, and attribute much of the success I had to the connections I developed with workers who had their own lived experience. I'd never developed that kind of trust or rapport with other counsellors or facilitators. And it's this magic of peer work, I think, that we all really resonate with. And this project, as mentioned, rapid consultation. It was a very short time frame between when the EOIs were put out and when the deadline was, for which I do apologise. But what happened was we had such a great response, in such a short period of time, and there was a really strong was both mental health and alcohol and other drug. And I think there has been a lot of conversations, but I don't know that the alcohol and other drug sector has always felt so involved or included in that. This is the same slide that Sarah showed, but I guess I just wanted to highlight again. So, we've been really trying to pull the poles of the tent right out. So consumer, Aboriginal, family and significant other, and this range of specialisations, really try and make sure that we're thinking broadly in this state. And like Louise says, this is a bit innovative. This is not, this was not easy to find in other states. I just wanted to sort of reflect again, just that important, reflection about, Aboriginal people don't necessarily see the word peer as really being quite relevant to them. And I thought this quote from one of the interviews was very telling about, the lived and living experience of Aboriginal people, and making that all important connection with colonisation, which you have to live each and every day. So I think just that there is work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done around this, but it's really fantastic that this is the ambition of this work. And also just, again, this idea of keeping that tent really pulled out, frontline peer workers, leadership roles, advocacy, education, policy research and evaluation. For me, when I first had a look at this which is in the peer framework, so it's a little bit of a sneak preview. When I looked at this, I thought, oh, well, I sit in the advocacy column, but I hadn't really thought of myself that way. And I did rethink much of the work I'd done. And I also experienced that I guess that frustration from going between this sort of space where there's so much consultation to back. I sit on a range of committees that some of them are university based, and some of them I'm still doing some work around pelvic mesh. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that particular medical disaster, but it's so hard. You're back to being just one consumer with 20 clinicians, and I just it's as I say, it was really got me thinking about so many things, this project. Actually, I can't quite. Hayley, I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking at here.
You just go to the next slide, Pip.
Yeah, sorry. I should have double-checked these because we're a little clear. Anyway, so one thing that I really wanted to reflect back was the reference group conversations was, I'm sure you've all heard that parable of the elephant. So one person looks at it and, at the end it says, it's a rope, and one person looks at the other one and, it's like the ear, and they go, no, it's a snake. And the other one said, no, it's a tree, because they're looking at the leg, and it's a fan. And I think what we're really trying to say is we are really trying to keep this really broad. We want the whole elephant with this workforce association. And we talked a lot about the importance of it being lived experience led. And that came up over and over again. And I think, there's those really important conversations around lived experience and champions and how that works together. And I think, the early work that we did with the reference group, I think there's some really good opportunities. And we were having, I feel, some different conversations because we had, again, that mental health and drug and alcohol blend in that group. So it talks about, this quote here talks about the shared understanding and how important it is. And so just reflecting that, yes, there has been a lot of consultation, but not all of it has involved drug and alcohol to the same degree. And so that's an important thing to consider. So other high level things that, reflections so far, frontline lived experience workers need support now. So I think that's something that's really strong. And so I just used an important quote, just a quote from the survey that was done by peer workers. And so just really wanted to reflect back that there were a few comments like that, and we heard that. Obviously, organisations need support, and I thought this was a really interesting comment about, health leaders being shoehorned into leadership roles, and they're not really given, they might be great clinicians, but management is a completely different skill set, and then there might be, oh yeah, you can manage the peer worker, but a peer worker should, have an experienced and competent manager, not just somebody who's having their first management role. We talked about this exciting possibility. So when I mentioned that we had a look across the nation, there wasn't anything quite like this. There wasn't drug and alcohol, mental health and suicide prevention. There wasn't consumer and family significant other. It wasn't it wasn't as inclusive as what we're looking for in West Australia, except for Queensland. Queensland Lived Experience Network is doing some really great work. So that's a partnership between a peer-led mental health and drug and alcohol and suicide prevention service called Brook Red and a PHN. But what you notice is that their work, it travels as fast as the funding. So it goes for a little while and then it stops, goes for a little while and then it stops. And, I think, again, there's that opportunity that we have, as, as Sarah has outlined, around, actually being resourced to do this. I don't know. I mean, I've been working in the not-for-profit sector for 20 years, and I do have lived experience in incorporating organisations and all the work that's involved. I was very involved with the establishment of the Alcohol and Other Drug Consumer and Community Coalition over 5 years. So I just feel like there's something that we all recognise in this exciting possibility. And also, we felt like this work, you know, is also complex and important. So it's about having hard conversations. And I thought this was really interesting when people say they want to have open and honest conversations, but when it comes to it, sometimes that's not so easy. And I think also that idea of focusing on the vision and, you know, really trying to keep that idea of the vision and, you know, stop, you know, falling into that somebody's got to win this tender thinking, but remember that what it is we're trying to do together. And I've mentioned already, there isn't really exactly a model out there. And I think it's really about that plan, do, study, act, that iterate cycle, that innovation. Yeah, and just do it, learn and iterate. So they were, you know, some that came up with lots of conversations. And I think, you know, I just did not want to forget that peer work at its heart is relational. That is the magic, is the relationship that people offer on that front line between people, you know, so they bring their lived experience, and it is something that really helps somebody to heal and move forward in their lives. So we don't want to forget that relational work, those difficult conversations, that takes time, getting everyone on the same page, and it's really important and really potentially very valuable work. So, so the final report, I've put September, you know, because yes, haven't quite finished the homework yet, but I've been working very hard on the homework, and been having, Hayley and myself have been immersing ourselves in all that. And I do want to apologise, Hayley, because I haven't properly acknowledged you. You've been an incredible project person. I've gotten so much out of working with you. And so we are galloping to the finish line to get this report through to the Mental Health Commission. As mentioned, it's very pragmatic. It's about hopefully getting a tender, you know, so then we can actually get funding to do this. That's what it's all about. So just currently there's a landing page on the Helping Mind website. So I'm hoping to get some sort of a replay and reports on that. Obviously, you know, Louise has talked about, Louise and Sarah talked about there being, you know, a hub. So, you know, it's not really clear to me. And I keep on saying I just feel so invested in this and so invested in all the incredible work that people do in this space. It's such important work. And yes, so that's a little bit of a summary. I really felt like I really wanted to have an opportunity just to circle back to some people. I know not everyone can come tonight, but just to share what's going on with the sector at the moment. So I just wanted to, first of all, before I go to you, Trish, I will just ask if Louise and Sarah wanted to share any reflections from that.
I guess I just wanted to say thanks, Pip, for the work that you're doing, and everything's going around with this piece of work. I guess one of the highlights, you know, we talked about that it is a very quick process, and I think the reason why we were happy to do it in that quick process is because it's not something that has just suddenly we've decided that there should be an association. We know there's been a lot of feedback that's come from the national work, from the state work, from the piece of work that we're doing within our framework, all of the consultation that's happened there and the feedback that we've received. So we weren't kind of starting from scratch. And the second point is, I guess, as Pip alluded to just then, is the reason we need this so soon is because we want to ask for money for next year. So we've got this first piece of scoping what it should look like, and now the next piece is to say to government, right, this is what we think it should look like. Now give us the money to do something, and then that's when we can hand back out to the people to then try and create something. So yeah, that's all I want to say on that. Louise, did you want to add something?
Yeah, with the scoping of this work, Pip, Hayley, Sarah and myself have been having discussions as they've been doing consultations and feedback from the reference group, and we know that, you know, this peer work association needs to be peer led. It can't be anyone else led, it has to be peer led. And there's probably a little bit of work between the final report that Pip and Hayley are speaking about and going out to tender. There's a bit of work that would say if this association is peer-led, what does that look like, and what does the structure of that organisation look like, and what would it be some of its key priorities in the first, second and third year? There's probably a little bit of work there to make sure it is peer-led. And I'm not sure, some of you may or may not know, but the Commission gets its funding from Treasury, and Treasury don't give no money to anyone without them having an ABN. They're incorporated, they're a legal entity. So it's difficult to know, do you give the funding to an already established organisation that has some of that legal entity stuff, or do you give it to a brand new organisation that could be peer-led? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is we need to make sure it is peer-led, and the structure and the work of that organisation has been peer-led. So I think, there's a little bit of work to make sure that happens before it would go out to tender. And I know Sarah and I were speaking late last week about maybe the first year is about getting the constitution down, a peer-led constitution, a peer-led structure, and that then goes up for additional funding once that bit of work has been completed. Some of you know how my thinking goes, which is if it all went pear-shaped, what should we have done in the first place? So that's how I started thinking about that. And that's where our conversation led to, is a little bit of a gap there to make sure it is peer-led. Because we know pay and conditions have always been a bit of a rub for peer workers, because it's not as yet recognised as a discipline in its own right. Therefore, it doesn't have its own award, but that's some of the work we're trying to do. And I suggest that could be the role of a peer association in the first instance, but in the background, the Commission is already starting some of that work to match up pay scales, because there is a bit of a variation in what peer workers are paid. So it's all coming together, and I really see this as a tipping point. Many of us have been in the peer workforce a really long time. I think for myself it was 21 or 22 years now. So this has been a long time coming, and I think there's, it's really trailblazing work. So don't underestimate the impact you guys are having and the influence you're having on shaping the peer workforce going forward. Thank you.
Trish, over to you.
Thanks. This is kind of a circling back question that came to me as you were running through that, Pip, but to Sarah and Louise, just regarding the wide tent, the lived experience workforces, and then down like the different sectors that are represented in those specialisations, like forensic justice, homelessness, which it would include housing, disability veterans. I was just wondering how has the Mental Health Commission started, or is there a plan to have conversations with other government departments that could learn from this work? I know there's some work being done, because I'm involved in it, in the housing and homelessness sector, for that lived experience workforce upskilling kind of work to be done. But the same, it'd be great to have lived experience peer workers in the justice system. And this is like, it's brilliant to hear how all the bits are being tied together. And then I go, oh, well, let's make it wider and bring them all in. But I just thought at that level, where is the Commission having those interdepartmental conversations to sort of, tap way out there and continue to tap down here, and eventually it'll all be big and messy and glorious, just like lived experience work is.
Thanks, Trish. Great points. We definitely are working with some of the other organisations already. So just things like even presenting the slides that I presented to you today, I presented it recently to the first responders group, which includes police, justice, ambulance, kind of all of those sorts of people. So it's those first initial conversations to let them know something's happening. And then when we've got our framework and we've got our organisational toolkit, we can say, and here's the tools for you guys to pick this up. I think a big piece of what, and you'll have to remind me here, Louise, if it is actually stated in our framework, but I think a big part of it was to say that this is something that, whilst it is for the mental health and AOD sector, we definitely see it as something that's transferable across other sectors.
Yeah, it does say that in the framework, and some of you may know some of the Commission's other pieces of work. Our engagement framework and toolkit in our paid participation policy. So those two, one was co-produced, one's a co-designed piece of policy, specifically for the mental health and AOD sector. But what we've found is other sectors have picked them up. We get phone calls from other government departments, both here in WA and also interstate. So from our experience, if we start with what we know, mental health, AOD, suicide prevention, you do good work, the word gets out, and if you build it, they will come, Trish. That's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, awesome, thanks.
So I was just double checking, like I can't, oh, Hayley's got your hand up. Over to you, Hayley, sorry.
All right, thanks. I just wanted to say just thanks to Louise for just wrapping up, I guess, the where to from here next steps, because I know for a lot of people, the concerns perhaps that were expressed around, so is this the consultation? Is this all we get to say? And also the knowledge that having, looked at all of the raw data very recently and trawling through that, and the knowledge that we probably still have a bit of work to do to get on the same page and have that shared understanding created across, all of the workforces. So I just wanted to thank you for that. That's given me a lot of hope that you have that thinking ahead of you in the process that's coming. And I think it's helpful too to everybody else to sort of understand how this sort of fits, that this project that we're doing is really just a piece of information that's going to be sitting with you to be used for developing that business case. It's not the be all and end all, it's just one part of a bigger picture. Yeah. So I think that's really important that everyone understands that, but also how valuable that piece of information is in that bigger process as well. And I wanted to thank everyone. There's so many open hearts I've witnessed in this process, and people sharing, their hopes and their dreams and their disappointments too along the process. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being willing, everybody, to just sort of put yourself out there and share your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you, Hayley. I know that Troy has already left, but he did say, as a current mental health peer work certificate for a student, it's exciting to be involved and to see the direction we're heading. So I thought that was really nice. I didn't get to say that before he left. And Louise and Sarah, did you want to respond to Hayley?
Just thank you, Hayley. I think it's really exciting. And it's the work that, we're all doing little pieces across all of these spaces. So it's not, yes, we've got this, we're fortunate in that we are working for this government entity where we're able to apply for funding and go through it that way. But we need everybody else's involvement, or it's not going to work.
And we've also tried to future-proof the framework, just linking and going back a little bit to what Trish said. It's page 20 in the framework. There's a fantastic diagram, and we thank Lynn Marboob for that there, where she has a diagram that links sort of, this is what clinical support looks like, and this is what social support looks like. And peer workers consider across both of that, but specifically in the social support, and that includes housing, poverty, employment, all those things. So it's about addressing the social determinants. And we know from the Productivity Commission, also the Victorian Royal Commission, and also in Mental Health Australia's latest sort of media releases and submissions, they talk about mental health and well-being and social determinants rather than mental health as an illness and looking through at a deficit lens. So that page 20 where it says about social determinants, that's a bit, we can literally, not literally, but mentally rip out and go, we said this about the peer workforce, and now we're going to take it to, you can apply this to housing, education, all those type of things as well. So, yeah, we hope we're positioning the framework and the rest of the project to springboard the peer workforce from this day forward.
I just wanted to do a bit of an energy check, because I put in an hour and a half just in case we needed it. But I feel, I don't know about others, but I feel like you know, quite a few people have had to head off at 5. I kind of feel like we're done. What do others feel? Because it's always nice to finish early, isn't it? So on that note, I will just ask Hayley if you wouldn't mind stopping the recording.